The controls and gauges on the 3500 and 3505 are located to the operator's right in the same configuration for both models. Controls on the console are the key ignition switch with start, run, and stop position, throttle to control engine speed, cutting deck lift lever to lower and raise the decks. On the 3500 model, the lever also moves the sidewinder cutting decks left or right. A lift lock lever that pulls back to prevent the decks from dropping during transport. A power takeoff switch to start and stop power to the cutting blades. Gauges on the console include an hour meter, alternator warning light, glow plug indicator, engine temperature warning light, and low oil pressure warning light. The parking brake is a lever next to the console. A slope warning indicator to the right of the steering column shows if you are on an incline that is too steep. Refer to the operator manual for the model you are using to be sure you know and understand all the controls and gauges for operation of that mower. Perform basic preventive maintenance checks on the mower before starting the engine. Locate the hydraulic tank on the unit and check the hydraulic fluid level. Always clean any debris before removing the cap. Remove the dipstick and check to be sure that the hydraulic fluid level is within 1/4 inch of the notch. Check the engine oil level at the dipstick. It is located under the hood on the right side of the 4500 and 4700 models, and the left side on the 4300, 3500, and 3505 models. Remove the dipstick. If the oil level is not within the notch area, add the recommended oil at the oil filler cap. Check the battery, located on the right side of the machine near the fuse block, or behind the operator's seat, depending on the model. Locate the coolant expansion tank and check that the level is between the two lines. If additional coolant is needed, add it through the expansion tank. Never remove the radiator cap because coolant under pressure is dangerous. Inspect the radiator and oil cooler at the rear of the engine. The oil cooler tips out by unlatching the two clips. Clear any chaff, dust, and debris off the surfaces with high-pressure air. The fuel gauge is next to the fuel tank filler cap on the right side of the machine on the 4000 models, and on the left side below the seat on 3000 models. To refuel, be sure the machine is level and in an open area. Use only diesel fuel. Mixing or using the wrong fuel can cause needless downtime and repair. Fill the fuel tank just to the bottom of the fill neck. When fueling, always make sure there is no open flame or ignition source that could ignite the fuel. The groundsmasters are equipped with several safety interlock switches that should be checked before operation. Have the unit in a large open area. Put the cutting units down with the parking brake on. Stop the engine. Depress the traction pedal and try to start the engine. It should not crank. Start the engine. Lift off the seat and try to engage the Pt2 power takeoff. It should not engage. With the engine still running, without your weight on the seat, move the traction pedal out of neutral. The engine should shut off. If any of these interlock checks do not work, do not operate the machine. Report the situation to your maintenance supervisor. It is strongly recommended that you stop the engine before leaving the seat. However, if necessary, you may get off the seat with the engine running. Have the traction pedal in neutral, the power takeoff disengaged, and fully engage the parking brake. Before starting the job, perform a routine inspection of the mower and adjust mower settings. The height of cut adjustment is done with height of cut bolts. There are 3 bolts on each deck. The cutting units can be set from 3/4 to 4 inches in 1/4 inch increments. Ensure all decks are set to the same height. If the mower has lights, make sure that all work lights are functional. To start the unit, have your foot off the traction pedal and set the parking brake. Push the throttle halfway open and put the Pt2 switch in the neutral off position. During cold weather or the first start of the day, turn the ignition switch to the on or preheat position. Once the glow indicator light dims, turn the key to the start position and release the key when the engine starts. Don't crank the engine for longer than 15 seconds. If the engine doesn't start, turn the key to the off position. Wait 15 seconds and repeat the entire starting procedure. After the engine is warmed up and running smoothly, increase the throttle to full power. Always mow with the engine at full throttle. Reduce the engine throttle to low for a few moments before stopping the engine to cool the turbocharger before shutdown. All Groundsmaster mowers are designed for a single operator. Never carry a passenger or allow children or untrained adults to operate the machine. It's a good idea to operate your Groundsmaster in an open area under supervision until you get used to the mower. Practice driving on a flat surface away from obstacles until you are comfortable with the controls and maneuverability. Practice going forward and reverse with the decks both up and down. Also practice stopping by using the traction control pedal and using the brakes. On the 4700 model, one or both of the wing decks can be raised while in motion to mow in between objects or along narrower areas. Maneuver around trees and other obstacles so you are familiar with the space required to use the mower you are operating. When you reach the job site, check the area for debris and remove items that could be picked up and thrown by the blades. Debris such as tree limbs, rocks, or other items could damage the machine or could be discharged from the cutting deck, causing damage or injury. Before mowing, make sure that you are aware of buildings or windows that could be damaged by thrown objects. Set your mowing pattern to minimize debris from hitting windows or buildings. If anyone comes into the area you are mowing, stop the unit, disengage the blade until the area is clear. Thrown objects from the mower could seriously injure bystanders. As you approach the mowing area, lower the cutting decks once the front decks are over the mowing area and engage the Pt2 switch. To achieve a professional straight line cut and even striping, find a tree or other object in the distance and drive straight toward it. For turnaround, raise the cutting decks as you leave the cutting area. Drop them as you approach the cutting area after your turn. Mow around bunkers, ponds, or other contours aligning with the outside cutting deck, keeping the tractor tires as far away from the edge as possible. If you suspect you have hit an object like a curb, branch, or rock, disengage the blades, shut off the engine, and remove the key from the ignition before investigating. Inspect the cutting decks to ensure they are still functioning properly. The 4700 model wing decks are designed to retract back and upward on a slow-speed impact. Be sure to verify that the deck is back in the proper position and functioning before resuming work. If anything changes in the sound of the engine or cutting decks, or you notice any unusual smells, immediately stop the unit. If a cutting deck becomes clogged or is not working properly, disengage the power takeoff. Shut down the engine and remove the key before attempting to clear the decks or inspect the equipment. Never use your hands or feet to clear the blades or underside of the decks. Never put your face near the blades or underside of the decks. Debris may be holding the blades under tension and could move the blades even with the power takeoff and engine off. Using a piece of wood or stick, clear the blades and underside of the cutting decks with extreme caution. Look ahead of your cutting path for obstacles that you may encounter. Stay away from drop-offs, ditches, steep banks, or water. Wheels dropping over edges can cause a rollover, leading to serious injury or death. Always use caution to avoid snaring trees, fences, or other objects, especially with models with side or wing cutting decks. Use special caution when mowing on or near slopes. And never mow on a hill that has not been approved by your supervisor. Refer to the operator's manual for maximum slope limitations. Reduce speed and avoid sudden stops and starts. If possible, do not raise or lower decks while moving on a slope. Be aware of hazards at the bottom of the slope. When mowing on a slope, you may have to use the steering brakes to maintain traction control. Feather the uphill brake to transfer more power to the downhill wheel for more traction. If you operate or transport on a public street, always have the required safety signs and equipment in accordance with local laws and regulations. When you are transporting the mower on public streets, raise and lock all decks in their full up position. If the unit must be pushed or towed, open the hydraulic bypass valves to prevent damage to the hydraulics.